Every good thing comes to an end. Yes, we are talking about Pep's reign at Manchester City. Now, before we get into the topic, I have to make it clear that as of now, there are no indications that Pep is leaving. His current contract runs at least till the summer of 2025. So unless something catastrophic happens or he just decides to leave, it is safe to say that he has at least over a season still in the Premier League. There's also the possibility that he'll sign a contract extension, keeping him at the Etihad longer than his current tenure. Having said all of that, in the light of Jurgen Klopp's departure from Liverpool at the end of the season, it got us thinking about what happens when Pep leaves too. If you haven't guessed by now by looking at our catalogue of videos, we are big admirers of Pep, his teams and his tactics. We believe that he's firmly in the conversation of the greatest manager football has ever seen. His record speaks for itself, but as we said earlier, all good things come to an end. Pep has coached some great teams. His Barca team is still regarded as one of the best teams ever assembled. So what happens when such a coach leaves your club? How do you replace someone with so much influence? Well, for starters, let's take a look at the clubs that he has left before. Consider subscribing to our channel. It's free and helps us a ton. Thanks. Pep Guardiola joined Barcelona in 2008. He coached Barca for 4 years. We have thoroughly covered his tenure at Barca, so for the sake of brevity, it suffices to say that he had an incredibly successful tenure at Barca. The Spanish team that won the World Cup and the Euro was heavily influenced by players playing for Barcelona. 14 trophies in 4 seasons tells its own story. But what happened after? Of course, Barcelona still had amazing players, and under his assistant Tito Vilanova, Barca remained a force to reckon with for some time. Luis Enrique led Barca to another continental treble in 2015, making them the first team to achieve the continental treble twice. They won more league titles and Copa del Rey's, even though the Champions League became elusive after 2015. It was increasingly becoming apparent since Guardiola's departure that tactically, Barcelona were regressing and was being carried more and more by their excellent players. The style of play was changing, and not for the better. They still had Messi, Neymar, Suarez, Iniesta, Busquets, etc., who were carrying the team, but soon they all started leaving one by one. Neymar's departure in particular was very controversial. Meanwhile, they were making stupid moves in the transfer market, buying Coutinho, Dembele, Griezmann, etc. for exorbitant money, and not because they fit a specific tactic or playing style or were direct replacements for any of the players leaving. Guardiola used to be very particular about who he wanted in the team, what profile, who he did not want, etc. Seemed like those transfer strategies had been thrown out by the Barca regime, especially Bartomeu. Financial troubles soon engulfed Barca. The trophy still came, but the club, as we knew under Guardiola, was gone. The Spanish national men's team too felt the effect of Pep's departure, as the Spanish era of domination in the international arena came to an end. After a year-long sabbatical, Guardiola joined Bayern Munich. 3 seasons, 3 league titles, 2 domestic cups and 2 continental cups. Guardiola's fingerprints were also visible on Joachim Löw's 2014 World Cup winning German team, which had a lot of Bayern Munich players. For example, Löw switched Philipp Lahm's position to midfield, just like Guardiola did for Bayern Munich. 6 of Pep's players started that final against Argentina. Captain Lahm, Manuel Neuer, Jerome Boateng, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Toni Kroos and Thomas Müller were then joined in extra time by Mario Götze, who scored the winner. However, when it comes to Guardiola, he's usually judged by his success on the European stage, especially the Champions League. Under Guardiola, Champions League success eluded Bayern Munich, and he left the club without winning the Champions League despite reaching the semis on all 3 occasions. Guardiola's departure did not affect Bayern Munich as they continued winning trophies. However, by the looks of it, the club is in way more chaos right now than in Guardiola's time. Also, since Guardiola's departure, Bayern's performances were perceived to be lackluster despite winning the Bundesliga every season. They did go on to win a continental treble under Hansi Flick, but it was evident that since Guardiola, the performances had dwindled. This also reflected in German performances on the international stage. The 2018 and the 2022 World Cup saw Germany crash out of the tournament in the group stage itself. This brings us to Manchester City, the club which has been awash with money since 2008, yet had won only 2 Premier League titles since, and it felt they were underachieving. Despite many good to great players painstakingly assembled into a team by Mancini and Pellegrini, the team was nowhere close to realizing its potential. 2016, Pep arrived, and now 7.5 seasons later, Manchester City can easily be called the best team in the world. We're into Pep's 8th season with Manchester City, which in itself is a miracle looking at his relatively shorter stints with Barcelona and Bayern Munich. Especially in modern football, it's rare for a manager to stay at a club for the length of their initial contract, let alone 8 seasons. In fact, if Pep doesn't extend his contract and simply stays till the end of his current one, he would have stayed at Manchester City for 9 seasons, which is a miracle considering how little leeway modern managers get from their clubs, especially in the top flight. Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Diego Simeone, etc. are rare to see in modern football. In his tenure at City, he transformed the way football is played in England and ushered in an era of forward-thinking, progressive managers. From Mikel Arteta, who worked with Pep as an assistant manager, to Roberto De Zerbi, who in his own words, quote, became a coach for Guardiola because I loved his Barcelona, end quote. Even if Guardiola's playing style hasn't been adopted by the English international team like it was adopted in Spain or Germany, many Manchester City players are important parts of the England setup. The current Manchester City set atop football as the current continental treble holders, defending Premier League and Champions League champions, with an opportunity to extend their title-winning run into this season. And that begs the question, what happens to a club that is structurally dependent on a coach's tactics and style? While Pep Guardiola arrived at the Etihad in 2016, the Manchester City hierarchy were already on the Pep train even before he left Barcelona. While Pep was tearing it up in the Bundesliga, Manchester City were preparing the conditions at their club to make the transition to Pep Guardiola as seamless as possible. From recruitment decisions to youth setup, everything was being molded in Guardiola's tactical image. So how do you move on from those ethos that have been so deeply ingrained in the DNA of the club over the last decade or so? Well, of course, the answer ain't easy. We have seen how clubs like Barca and Bayern found it difficult to adjust to life after Pep. I'm not saying their current predicaments are all due to departure of Pep, but his departure definitely played a part. And that was when Pep coached those teams for only 3 to 4 seasons. Imagine what happens when he leaves a club after coaching them for 9 seasons, especially when the club is built on the coach's ethos through and through. Well, one solution is that City doesn't let him leave. They extend his contract, he stays for more time, keeps breaking records after records after records, and City keep going their merry way. It'll be fantastic, right? Of course, it's fantastic. It's also unrealistic. Pep will leave, if not this season, the next season, if not next season, then at some other point in time. It is inevitable. The other, more realistic option is that City hire a coach who believes in the same ethos as Pep. The question is who those managers could be. We talked about Arteta and Roberto De Zerbi before. Both have shown at their respective clubs that they are capable of playing forward-thinking, expansive, attacking football. Arteta has genuinely turned Arsenal around. Since Wenger's departure, this is the most stable Arsenal has been. A team full of youngsters has bought into the Arteta way. De Zerbi is another man who has done similar things at Brighton. On a limited budget, he's gotten more out of his team than anyone else on similar budgets. While Brighton's form hasn't been as good as last season, his team still gives the 100% and his stocks have only gone up in this time. However, then the question arises, are they even available? As of now, Arteta seems to be in at Arsenal for the long haul. The way he's building the team and the way the players and the fan base have bought into him, it doesn't seem like he's leaving Arsenal anytime soon. Not to say that this is football and anything is possible. De Zerbi does seem to be more available, but he's also seemingly courted by Liverpool for life after Klopp, especially if they don't get Xabi Alonso. So, if they're not coming, then who? Julian Nagelsmann, Zinedine Zidane, or someone with less experience but deploys similar systems, a la Vincent Kompany or Xavi. Finding the right manager is only part of City's headache. Nobody can be like-for-like replacement for Guardiola. Nobody can emulate Guardiola's tactical nous. Manchester City's current system has Guardiola's ethos drilled into it. Any new manager will have different tactics and man management skills. The point would be how City cope with that. Any new manager will still have access to the vast resources of Manchester City, which means they can still remain successful. We have seen as much at Barca and Bayern, but we have also seen that how managers, even with vast resources, can fail. If money was the only criterion, Manchester United would have had more success in the last decade. Then there is a little matter of the 115 charges brought by the Premier League, but that's a completely different beast. By the way, we do have a video that explains what those charges are. Do take a look. A good thing for City is that their upper management seems shrewd and very business as well as football savvy, and thus they may not be prone to making boneheaded decisions like their cross-city rivals. But there's always a possibility of chaos when a long-serving manager departs. Also, it will be naive to think a manager can replicate the success of Guardiola, who is in a class of his own. No manager can match Guardiola's trophy-winning capabilities, money or no money. If anything, maybe more clubs get to win the Premier League post-Guardiola. One thing is certain, and that is uncertainty. If and when Pep departs. He's been such a special manager that anybody who follows will be under immense pressure to perform, and it will be interesting to see if City hierarchy shows the same patience they showed to Pep after his first season. Either way, a post-Guardiola Premier League will be very interesting. Thank you for watching. Like if you liked it, share if you found it worthy, and subscribe for more content like this. This is Salty Football.